Hey there, I have a message. Abuse fucking sucks. So, I don't know how much I've talked about this. Okay, so I make videos and I never watch them because I don't know why I don't like watching myself sometimes. It's weird. But, anyway. So, little, like, I don't know if I've talked about this, but when I was a kid, I was physically and emotionally abused by my mom. And, like, it's easy for me to basically just, if I just start talking about my past, to just start rattling off stories, and people are just like, what? Whoa, what? Whoa, that's messed up. And yeah, it is messed up. But you know what's even more jacked up is the fact that this shit, like, gets in your head and you don't even know that it's there, and it, like, messes with you. So I'm being messed with right now, and I'm going to tell you I'm being messed with, and it sucks. So I've had three moments, what I call like paradigm shifting moments as far as this abuse stuff goes. So the first one was like my mom was always she was always there in my life, and the first paradigm shift moment was when she moved out. And so just a brief overview, I basically grew up being the parent of sorts, but being kind of punished for it at the same time. My mom like locked herself in her room for years. She'd only come out to like go to work or go to the bathroom. It was my job to clean. It was my job to cook. But the thing is, if I did too good of a job at that stuff, she'd get pissed because she thought I was trying to usurp her role as mom. So like, I don't know. Just anyway. So and you know, I guess I should say that if she did come out of her room, we always knew that it was a bad thing because she would like start hitting us and beating us and going crazy. So and like you know, my dad was absent or very passive about everything. And some yeah. Anyway, I want to keep it brief. I talk too much. So anyway, first paradigm shifting moment was when she left. I'd always lived with this stuff. I thought it was normal for a mom to sit in her room all day for like years and stomp on the floor when she wanted water, you know, so that she had food and water to eat. I thought that that was normal. And then like in high school, I would talk to people just candidly like, my mom hit me in the face with a keyboard yesterday. It sucked. And then she was inside the house screaming and you could hear it all the way down the block. And all of us like ran outside. We were scared. Like I tell people that and they were like, what? I was like, yeah, that's how I got a big fat bruise on my face. Yeah. Yeah, anyway, the first time she left, it was in my senior year in high school, and she took two of my siblings, and basically, it was like weird and awesome because she left, and I was waiting for the van to drive all the way down the street, and I was just like holding my breath. Oh my God, is this happening? She's gone, she's gone. And I waited a couple days to make sure that, you know, she didn't change her mind and come back, and I realized, wow, this place, this house fucking sucks. But I can change it. I can do stuff, and it's mine, and I don't have to be sorry about it. I don't have to feel guilty about like cleaning it or not cleaning it or oh my God, I can start to shape my reality. So it was interesting. It was crazy. It was weird. And I like we cleaned, me and my brother, we cleaned the whole house and we started we started basically defining our new lives without her in it. And about 10 days after that, after we started that, I started having these nightmares of her like brutally, vividly, like incredibly vivid dreams of her murdering all my siblings in front of me. And I would, you know, she'd injure me, but I'd jump out a window, break my leg, and then go to the neighbor's house, and like I wouldn't be able to speak, you know, because I'd like try and ask them for help, but I couldn't talk. Like metaphor, anyone? But I started having these crazy dreams, and I had them over and over again, and I can't tell you like how much these dreams disturbed me. And then I talked to my brother about it because I was a little bit like freaked out. I'm like, these keep happening, and I was like, Andrew, I keep having these dreams, and he's like, you too? I was like, and that was just the start of a whole like mindfuck time in my life. I would be sitting in class in high school and I'd have these memories that I'd repressed. They'd just come back like a bolt of lightning and I'd relive it and it'd be weird and it was crazy. And I was paranoid of her coming home. I was incredibly paranoid. My moods were out of control, which, by the way, when you grow up in a house with an abusive mom or abusive parent, like you learn emotional control. Case like I'll just give you a little example of what she would do a lot of the time. She'd file us all into this very narrow hallway with no escape route, and like we would be pressed against the wall, and she'd be this far away from our faces, and her face would be red, trembling, and she'd be screaming all sorts of things at you, and you had like it was like fight or flight going crazy in your head, and you had to learn to not cry. Don't cry. Don't get mad. Don't get scared. Don't respond. Because if you respond in any way, it will get worse. She'll just take your head, smack it into the wall, rip your hair, do whatever. Like, so you learn to really control your emotions. So when I lose control, it's weird and jacked up. So that was the first time. That was the first time I had like a sort of paradigm shift, and I got through it. I got over it, and the positive thing about all of that was it made me. It was a situation that forced me to really admit that there was something really jacked up about my mom and our relationship with her. And when she and my siblings came back, I started talking to my siblings about it. And now, like before that time, we hated each other. We were like enemies. We would kind of recreate the abuse that she would enact on us on each other, and then now we're just like best friends, like almost. We get along almost too well. People sometimes say we're incestuous. So there's some positive to come out of that. The second paradigm shift is not nearly so profound, but it is still sort of significant. I became a Mormon missionary sort of to get out of the situation, to get out of this environment. And so among other things, there were other reasons, but we'll just keep it simple. And so I went on my mission. I realized the first so I guess the second time, like the first time is when she left. The second moment is when I left for the first time. I remember realizing that I had thought processes, like in the absence of that environment and being around her, I realized that I had thought processes that I always had in the back of my head that were taxing, kind of crazy and emotionally backwards, but they were defense mechanisms that helped me, but I no longer needed them. So for instance, whenever I walk into a room, I don't do this quite as much anymore, whenever I walked into a room, I would like scan the room in an almost paranoid fashion and make note of everything in it, and I would assess how much damage it could deal against me. I would assess how dangerous that object was, and I would anticipate it being used as a weapon and how I would counter it. It was just something I did automatically. That, and I would always look for the exits. Always have exits and an escape route. And the thing is, this is totally natural to me because this is the reality that I grew up in. Like when mom gets up out of her chair, freak out. The first thing that you do when you hear her get up out of her chair and start walking angrily upstairs is, where are you? Where are your escape routes? How are you going to get out of there? And I would always have these escape routes mapped out in my head. Not only mapped out, but I'd have bags packed. So I could run into my brother's room, grab the bag, jump out his window, into the bushes, around the corner, around the house, up the hill, up into the foothills, and then I would just like run and run and run and run and run. And so, like, this was life. And this is one reason why I was very hesitant to ever bring any friends over, is because they didn't have this. They didn't have this mindset. And I realized that. And I realized that my mom was incredibly unpredictable. And they wouldn't be prepared to get out quick. And as far as objects and things like that go, obviously, if she happened to catch you by surprise and she was already downstairs, like, you're in a room full of stuff, she's going to use some of the stuff against you. So, like, I already brought up the keyboard incident. I never thought that she'd use a keyboard against my face, but no. Everything, like pipes, baseball bats, even gasoline, for God's sakes, like, all sorts of things can be used as weapons. Poker sticks for the fire. I could just keep going on, because, like, mice could be used as projectile weapons, mugs. Like, I've had lots of shit thrown at me and lots of stuff swung at me. Anyway, so I realized that those processes were reflexes that I no longer necessarily needed. So anyway, there's that. And so now I find myself in the third, which is why I started off this video saying that abuse is absolute shit. Because here I am in college, I'm 27. I became a missionary when I was 21, and then like immediately went to school afterwards. So I basically haven't lived with my parents since I was 21. I sort of had this kind of illusion that I've moved beyond all that. It's very ancient history. And it's totally not. It's totally still with me. So the trigger for this third paradigm shift that I'm going through, which is fucking fun, let me tell you, is this is the first time I've ever been alone in my life. And I had no idea that this sort of situation would trigger this, but I guess that's the nature of random triggers and things. I'm alone for the first time ever, and I realized that I have lived my life for other people. So one of the first things I noticed after all of my roommates moved out, there was a huge exodus, everyone left, and it was just me left. One of the first things I noticed is I was trying to cook dinner, and I was like, oh, I'm going to cook this, they're going to love it so much, oh my god, and then I was like, no one's going to love it. I'm like, who am I going to cook for? What's the purpose of cooking food? And I'm like, for me? To cook for me? Becky cooks for Becky? This is odd. This is weird. I didn't know how to handle it, and I was a little uncomfortable with it, and I was like, okay, I'll do stuff for me. But anyway, the point is, I think I've got a lot of, and that's just a very small example of some of the shit I'm going through. But I mean, it's like the tiniest example. But I think I have a lot of emotional shit that I've buried, and I've been running away from it using various coping mechanisms. And I think it's time. I guess my brain is telling me it's time to deal with them, and I don't want to, but I gotta, because it's kind of immobilizing me. So I'm a workaholic. I've taught myself to work my ass off, and what I do is never enough, and somehow the situations I find myself in with being bogged down with so much work are like always my fault. So anyway, I have taken. I'm reading this book written for people in my situation, and it was interesting because it said that a lot of abuse victims take the way that they think of their abusive parent and their relationship with them, and they project them in future relationships, but like even with the rest of the world. And it was interesting because I took notes of how I thought of myself. Like, why did I become sort of the parent of the household? Why did I cook? Why did I clean? Why was it that my siblings came to me when they needed help with homework and things like that? Why did they come to me first? It's because I assumed that role. And the reason why I assumed that role is I realized that I was in a situation that was terrible, and it was easier to blame myself than to blame my parents, because every child wants reality to be stable. They want to feel secure, and so it's easier to say that you are the problem instead of the adults who have all of the power in your life. And so I would say that all of those moments, all of those acts of abuse, all of those times she called me a bitch, all the times she threw my laundry on the front lawn and told me to move out because I was such a terrible person, like all of those things, I internalized them. And like, you don't grow up with all of those messages given to you without believing them on some level. And so I've taken my relationship with trying to please someone that's impossible to please, and being responsible for all of their emotions, and being responsible for all of the conflict around me. Like, it's turned me into a workaholic. And my relationship with my bosses is exactly the same. My relationship with basically everyone around me follows this pattern. And I had no idea until I started reading this book. And like, the reason why the reason why I started reading this book is like I stopped. I don't know. It's just weird. Like, I'm talking a lot, but I couldn't sleep for like days and days and days on end. I get insomnia before, but like I'd go running and I'd try and do this or that to help it. But this is crazy insomnia, and I'd have days where I just couldn't work. I don't know why. Basically, I felt like I was breaking down, like I was a robot whose parts were rotting and falling off, and I just couldn't do anything anymore. And it was distressing to me. And it basically because I've been running for so long from these emotional problems and reliving a lot of the emotional and psychological aspects of my own abuse by projecting that reality onto the relationships of people around me. It's a clusterfuck. I'm still in the middle of it. The reason why I can't be brief about explaining is because I don't fucking understand it. I just know that it's reality. I know that it's happening right now, and I know that it is actually a good thing that I'm aware of this, because you have to know that there's something going on in order to engage that problem, in order to get beyond it. And if there's anything that I learned from my first paradigm shift, the really big dramatic one, was that there's some really good benefits on the other side of it. Like, this is a general rule that I have. Anything that scares the crap out of you is indicative of some positive thing that you could like get. Corny as it is, I think of fear as a door. It can either hold you back or you go through it to get to something awesome on the other side. So like this, a lot of this, it's really hard for me to talk about personal shit, but this explains a lot of things, like my relationship anxiety, why I can't get close to people, why I don't have many friends. I equate closeness with pain because that's how I grew up. The closer you get physically, the worse it's going to be. The closer you get emotionally, the worse it's going to be. I mean, repetition after repetition. This is just what I've learned. It's what I've been conditioned for. And like, it's so hard to try and admit admit it and then to try and deconstruct it and lay blame where it belongs. Yeah, anyway, so abuse fucking sucks. I find myself very angry at my dad right now because I realized for the first time in my life he was part of it. I always saw him as another victim, but he was an adult. He could have stopped it. He could have stopped all of this stuff. He was the glue in a way that held the whole situation together. I'm angry. I'm so angry, but I'm so afraid of hurting people because of all of the stuff that I've been through. I'm terrified of possibly hurting anybody. Not to say that I have violent impulses, but I am sort of terrified of that. I do genuinely, I don't take pride in any of my accomplishments. Whenever I work, it's a punishment of sorts. When I work, it's a punishment. It's a reminder that I am constantly defeated, even in my successes. Even my successes are defeats. I'm going to share you. Well, I'm going to share with you one thing before I stop talking, because it is really hard, and I don't want to bog people down with my shit, but it goes pretty deep. I don't have anyone to talk to, so I'm talking to the void that is the internet, which this is another thing. It's much easier to talk about personal shit to random people that I don't see every day than or people who I don't even see, like people online. It's much easier to talk to the anonymous than it is to talk to people I know, because once again, it's about that closeness thing. I just can't get close to people because it's anxiety inducing. But here's my little emo thing. While I work through my stuff, I draw pictures because I'm an artist, and that's part of how I cope. And this is sort of one of the saddest things I've drawn, but one of the things that resonates most with me. It says, I constantly dream of ways I could impress people to win their approval, but every success feels hollow. If I tell myself if I only run faster, I can catch the dream. If I matter enough to someone else, maybe I'll matter to myself. It's fucking true. I have so many things I could brag about, but I honestly, like, whenever I brag, I feel like I'm just trying to convince myself nothing I do matters. And I'm not trying to say that to be like, I'm just trying to be incredibly blunt. I've done really impressive things, technically, like with my profession. I've done some good things for my family. I don't know. I'm trying to convince myself any of it fucking matters because because I've internalized all this shit. So anyway, that's what I'm dealing with right now. Conclusions pending? I don't know. It's gonna take me a while to get through this shit. But yeah, abuse fucking sucks. But, positive note, I know there's good stuff on the other side of this. I just gotta step through this, I don't know, swamp of bullshit and deal with my crap instead of running from it. So yeah, that's that.